clothing feels so natural that we forget how strange it really is. Layers of fabric separating skin from world, hiding bodies that once faced wind, rain, eyes, and danger. Without protection. Imagine a human story where nothing covers us, where exposure is constant, and ask why that ever changed. Not comfort, not fashion, but something deeper. For most of our existence, human skin met the world directly, sun burning it by day, cold biting it by night, insects landing freely, strangers reading every scar and movement. There was no hiding then, only presence, and every interaction happened without barriers. Vulnerability was not symbolic. It was lived every moment. It is tempting to imagine those early humans as simple or unaware. But they laughed, feared, desired, and remembered just as deeply as we do now. Their nakedness did not erase emotion. It amplified it, making social life intense, immediate, and impossible to ignore. Bodies told stories before words fully could emerge naturally. Environment shaped everything. Open plains exposed bodies to sun and wind. Forests brushed skin with branches and insects. Nights carried cold that crept into bone. Survival demanded awareness, movement, cooperation, and endurance, long before it demanded coverings. Yet exposure also connected humans deeply to place. The land touched them constantly, without separation or distance. Modern explanations often begin with cold, with the idea that clothing emerged simply to keep bodies warm, but this answer feels incomplete, too clean, too narrow for a species that survives through meaning as much as muscle. Warmth alone does not explain ritual or display. Something else was quietly unfolding across generations, slowly. Others point to shame, to modesty, to the idea that humans suddenly felt embarrassment about their bodies. But shame is learned, shaped by culture and expectation, not born fully formed in the wild among survival-driven lives. Early humans did not hide from themselves. They understood bodies as tools and signals, essential, visible, shared, open. Before cloth, before stitching, before hides were shaped, skin itself communicated status, strength, age, and experience. Scars marked survival, posture revealed confidence, or fear. Movement spoke louder than decoration ever could. Every body was a living record of life. To be seen was unavoidable and powerful. Attention shaped bonds, and hierarchies constantly evolving. As humans gathered in groups, meaning began to layer itself onto survival. Belonging mattered, recognition mattered, being understood by others became as important as finding food or shelter in uncertain landscapes. Social bonds demanded signals that lasted beyond moments. Identity slowly separated individuals within crowds. Difference began to carry meaning quietly, subtly, powerfully. At some point, humans did more than endure the environment. They began to respond creatively to it. They altered surroundings, shaped tools, painted walls, told stories, and slowly learned that symbols could outlast moments. Expression became survival's companion, not its opposite. What we show others changes. How we live even before words stabilize, meaning covering the body may have begun as protection, but protection alone cannot explain pattern, choice, or repetition. Once something is worn intentionally, it stops being only practical and starts carrying messages. Messages about belonging, difference, role, or memory. The body becomes a surface for meaning. Culture leaves marks before language through visibility itself. Early clothing likely emerged unevenly, differently across places and climates, shaped by available materials and shared ideas. There was no single moment of invention, no dramatic switch from nakedness to dress. Change happened gradually, layered across generations, experimentation, imitation, and meaning evolved together. Small choices accumulated into traditions without anyone noticing fully why. What matters is not just when clothing appeared, but why it stayed. Once bodies are covered, uncovered skin becomes a choice, and choice invites judgment, attention, and power. Visibility shifts, and social meaning intensifies. What was once neutral becomes charged with implication. Identity begins to cling to appearance slowly, quietly, irreversibly across human communities. Clothing transforms how humans see one another. It frames bodies, directs attention, and creates boundaries where none existed before. It can unify groups or separate them, sometimes both at once. These effects unfold long before conscious philosophy. Meaning grows from repetition, not sudden intention. Worn daily, remembered collectively, carried forward by habit alone. The mystery is not why humans wanted to wear something, but why they needed to. Need suggests emotion, fear, belonging, protection, all tangled together rather than neatly separated. Clothing becomes a response to being seen, to exposure that is social, not just physical. It answers questions before words form silently, persistently everywhere. Long before fashion, long before modesty, something quiet began unfolding on human skin. A negotiation between survival and meaning, exposure and identity. Clothing did not arrive as an answer, but as a question humans were slowly learning how to ask. And once asked, it could never be undone. As coverings reappeared again and again, they stopped being experiments and became expectations. Quiet signals that humans were learning how to live, not only among nature, but among one another, shaping trust, reducing uncertainty, and anchoring social life. When humans began marking their bodies intentionally, even in the simplest ways, appearance started to carry memory. Not only among nature, a hide, a wrap, a layer meant someone had chosen how to be seen. That choice changed encounters, softened unpredictability, and created familiarity, where exposure once ruled, turning bodies into recognizable presences, rather than unknown risks. Clothing allowed humans to carry parts of their group with them, wherever they went. Materials came from shared hunts, shared landscapes, shared labor and effort. Wearing something was rarely solitary or accidental. It tied bodies to others, turning survival into a collective memory stitched into daily life. As groups grew larger, clothing helped manage the anxiety of strangers. It signaled who belonged, who was trusted, who followed which customs and rhythms. Before spoken language could clarify intention, garments spoke first, reducing fear by making the unfamiliar feel patterned, rather than chaotic or threatening. Protection mattered, but not only against weather or terrain. Clothing offered emotional shelter as well. It softened the gaze of others and created distance where constant exposure had once been exhausting. Being seen became adjustable, no longer absolute, allowing inner life to separate from surface. Over time, coverings accumulated, meaning beyond usefulness. Certain materials endured, others disappeared. Some garments were reserved, repeated, remembered across seasons. What began as response turned into tradition, and tradition became a quiet authority, shaping behavior without force, explanation, or instruction. With clothing came hierarchy. Slowly and almost invisibly, differences in dress reflected age, role, success, or proximity to power. These distinctions were not imposed suddenly. They emerged gently, normalized through repetition. Appearance became a way to organize society without constant confrontation or violence. Shame followed slowly, not as an instinct, but as a learned response, shaped by expectation. Once bodies were usually covered, exposure took on meaning. What had been neutral became noticeable. The uncovered body began to feel like a message, whether intended or not. Clothing also reshaped how humans saw themselves internally. Reflection became possible, not in mirrors, but in contrast. A person could recognize who they were by what they wore and what they did not. Identity gained edges, boundaries, and a sense of permanence. Ritual soon followed naturally from repetition. Clothing marked transitions, births, unions, and losses. Certain garments held stories and were worn only at moments that mattered. Fabric became memory, carrying emotion across time in ways skin alone could not preserve. Power learned to dress itself carefully and deliberately. Leaders distinguished themselves through excess, rarity, or symbolism. Clothing magnified authority by making it visible and unquestionable. To challenge appearance became to challenge order, turning fabric into a subtle tool of control. Yet clothing was never only about dominance or hierarchy. It also allowed care and recognition. To clothe another was to protect them, to acknowledge their worth. Parents wrapped children. Communities clothed the vulnerable. Fabric became an extension of empathy made visible. As clothing spread, humans grew more inward. Thoughts, intentions, and fears retreated behind layers. The body no longer revealed everything at once. Mystery entered daily life, and with it, imagination, interpretation, and deeper emotional worlds that reshaped connection. From that shift emerged culture as we recognize it today. Shared meanings, shared symbols, shared silence. Clothing became one of humanity's first languages. Read instantly, felt emotionally, rarely questioned, shaping relationships before a word was spoken. To wear something is to say something about fear, belonging, and hope without speaking. Clothing reveals that humans survive not only by adapting bodies to the world, but by shaping meaning together, quietly, endlessly, and with care.